Goeiedag, mijn naam is Evan, ik ben immigratieprocureur hier in Amerika en ik wil jou helpen om immigratiewet te verstaan. Now, I got this comment from a viewer yesterday, I believe, and I said that I wanted to make a video about it. And again, if you're new to this channel, remember to like, subscribe, share the video. If you're not a channel member, consider becoming one because that helps me continue to do the work that I'm doing here, which is to answer comments like this one. Now, this is important both for Afrikaners who are still inside Africa, that have family members here in the United States on H visas or whatever other type of visas and are pursuing asylum, because this question has actually come up a lot. And I want to be clear, this all breaks down or comes back to, it all loops back around to that infamous problem I've been talking about since this channel started, is the concept of persecution in the country from which you are fleeing. Now, for asylum seekers here in the United States, and I said we had really good news, that we now have a confirmed report of an Afrikaner since Trump's executive order of applying for asylum, going through the process, going through the USCIS interview, and being granted asylum. That is huge. However, we've also heard, for that one story, countless dozens, if not more, stories of Afrikaners who in the same time period have been rejected by USCIS and have been referred to the immigration courts. And again, that's not the end of the world. It means they get a second bite at the apple, although this time they have to prove their case in front of an immigration judge as opposed to in front of USCIS. Now, all that being said, that's great news to hear, but again, the process is incredibly difficult, and the process is individualized. Every single person going in has to prove, has their own burdens, has to make the case, has to make the argument that the three elements, whether it's past or future persecution, that the government or someone the government is unable or unwilling to control is persecuting you due to an immutable characteristic. Now, this question that's posed here is, my family members in the United States, can I come over on a tourist visa and visit them and then go back to South Africa? Well, of course you can, but let me be honest with you. You would then have effectively, in my opinion, and again, this isn't legal advice, I'm going to make this make sense to you, and I've seen it before, you have then effectively shot their application, their asylum application in the head and you've killed it. And let me explain why. If you genuinely feared persecution, which is more than mere discrimination and harassment in your home country, and you're making an asylum claim here in the United States, and you're saying, I cannot and will not go back, because if I go back, I'm either going to be tortured, killed, beaten, assaulted, raped, imprisoned, all the definitions we've given of persecution in the past. I refuse to go back. The U.S. government is going to know that your family member came over here, visited you, and then returned. They're going to ask you the question. They're going to say, okay, so you say you have this fear, and this fear is because of persecution, because of an immutable characteristic, something you can't change. If you go back, you will be beaten, you will be tortured, you will be threatened, you will be imprisoned, all of this because you're a white Afrikaner. How come your wife went back? How come your family remains inside Africa? I've seen this happen on so many asylum cases, and I've said this from the beginning, that the fact that even though not everyone can move to Orania, I get that, that's not the point I'm trying to make, the U.S. government's analysis doesn't necessarily care. The fact that there are Afrikaners who not only want to stay, but make, the point that they're thriving within South Africa is very detrimental to Afrikaners' asylum claims in the United States. I'm not talking about the refugee program. I'm talking about the asylum claims. And I don't blame USCIS. That's their job. They are the gatekeepers. They're trying to make sure that people's asylum claims are legitimate. And if you have family that stays in South Africa, they're going to ask why. Well, if the reason you're being persecuted is because you're white, how then is it possible for members of your family to stay in South Africa if they're white and clearly stand out, and that persecution you claim is legitimate and you fear it, right? The same thing if this person's husband or whoever, it doesn't matter, if the person here, the family member here, is claiming past persecution. Remember, past persecution gives you a rebuttable presumption of future persecution. Rebuttable meaning the government might listen to your story and say, okay, we believe that you actually were persecuted in the past because of an immutable characteristic. And because of that, you now have this rebuttable presumption of a well-founded fear of future persecution. Sorry, I had to pause the video, but I'm back. If you have this rebuttable fear you have a rebuttable fear, a well-founded fear of future persecution, the government's going to rebut it by saying, well, your family came and visited you and went back. So clearly that persecution, that persecutor isn't there anymore. And then you have to remember, if you're not claiming the government, if you're saying it's the government's unable or unwilling to control a certain group of people that's doing the persecution, then one of the bars for asylum is internal relocation. So if you can say, or if the USCIS asylum officer can say, well, your wife and your children, or your husband and your children went back to South Africa, they went to Cape Town. Well, Cape Town looks pretty safe. Why can't you just move there from your farm? Again, they don't care that you might have to take an economic loss. They're just saying, sorry, the conditions in your country are so terrible, but if you can relocate internally within South Africa, then you don't have an asylum claim. So to answer this person's question, or any of the people that keep having this question come up, can I come over and visit family member and go back? Sure, you can. And we've talked at length about the issues that might cause with your refugee application, which I believe it should have the same weight and same undermining of a fear of persecution as it does for asylum claims, because you went back. But I can guarantee you almost 100% that the government here will ask. And like I said, I've seen it many times where people here have fled here and filed for asylum, and one of the first things they ask, now let's say it's political opinion, right? I can hide my political opinion. You don't have to know, right? I don't have to have like a big hammer and sickle on my forehead and say I'm a communist or an eagle or something like that, right? You can't tell outwardly looking at me that I'm whatever political party I am. So I can argue, hey, I fled over here and my family believes the same as I do, but they keep their political opinion quiet. In the case of Afrikaners, you're claiming it's because you're an Afrikaner, because you're a white South African. So your family that is staying and choosing to remain in South Africa, or that came to visit you and went back, they can't hide the fact that they're white. So how were they able to continue to exist in this country where you fear persecution? So the short answer is, and I hope this makes sense without giving you legal advice or an opinion here, that if you have family over here and you come over to visit, or you want to come over to visit on some kind of a tourist visa or whatever, you can do it. But the U.S. government's going to know you were here. They keep track of all of this. And when your family member goes in for their asylum interview and they say, I have this well-founded fear, or I faced persecution in the past, and that gives me this well-founded fear, one of the things they're going to ask is, well, okay, how then did your family come over to visit you, and why then did they return to South Africa? Why did they go back to this place where you fear this persecution? So my advice is, if you have family over here and they filed for an asylum claim, do not come. Because if you do, it's going to present a problem for them. So I hope this makes sense. I hope this answers the question. Remember to like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you for the next video.